You're not here by accident. You found this video because something broke you. Maybe it was a person. Maybe it was a failure so humiliating you still can't say it out loud. Maybe it was the slow, quiet realization that the life you were building was built on sand. And now you're sitting in the rubble, looking at the pieces, wondering if there's even a version of you worth putting back together. Good. Because that wreckage is not your ending. That is your raw material. Every emperor who ever seized power began in chaos. Every man who ever became untouchable first had to survive being completely destroyed. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince from comfort. He wrote it from exile, from humiliation, from a place where they broke his body and watched him refuse to break his mind. That is the first lesson. The world will break your circumstances. It cannot break what you decide to become. But most men in your position grieve too long, explain too much, and go searching for sympathy in a world that only respects strength. Not you, not anymore. Drop a comment right now and say, "I am the rebuild," because that is the contract you're making with the most dangerous version of yourself. Number 2, the identity autopsy. Before you rebuild, you must be brutally honest about what actually collapsed. Not the surface story you tell people, not the version where someone else is entirely to blame. The real story, the one you whisper to yourself at 3 a.m. when the noise stops and the truth gets loud. Because here is what Machiavelli understood that most men never will. You cannot build power on a foundation of self-deception. You cannot become untouchable while still lying to yourself about why you ended up here. So let's do what most men are too afraid to do. Let's cut the body open and look at what's inside. Ask yourself this: who were you before the breaking? Not who you pretended to be, not the mask you wore for other people's comfort. Who were you really? Were you living by your own code, or were you performing a version of yourself designed to win approval from people who never deserved your energy in the first place? Were you building something real, or were you chasing validation dressed up as ambition? Most broken men, when they're truly honest, will admit one devastating thing: they never had a solid identity to begin with. What collapsed wasn't a strong man under impossible pressure. What collapsed was a constructed image that was never anchored in anything real. And that is not weakness. That is simply the truth. The Machiavellian doesn't flinch from truth. He weaponizes it. Because once you see clearly what was hollow, you know exactly what needs to be replaced with steel. This is the autopsy. You lay every piece of your old self on the table. Your beliefs, your habits, your relationships, your self-image, and you ask one cold, clinical question about each one. Does this make me stronger, or does this make me easier to destroy? Everything that makes you easier to destroy gets cut. No sentiment, no nostalgia, no mercy. The weak mourn what they lose. The powerful audit what no longer serves them and move forward without looking back. Go to the comments right now and type, "I audit, I evolve," because that is exactly what you are doing. Number 3, the Machiavellian core. Now that you've done the autopsy, now that you've laid every hollow piece of your old self on the table and had the courage to look at it without flinching, it's time to understand what you're actually building toward. Not a better mood, not a confidence boost, not some motivational high that fades by Thursday. You are building a core, an internal architecture so solid, so deeply rooted in principle and self-mastery that no person, no failure, no circumstance on this earth can reach in and destabilize you. That is what Machiavelli was truly teaching, not manipulation, not cruelty, not the cartoon villain philosophy that weak minds reduce him to. He was teaching the art of being unshakable in a world that is designed to shake you. The Prince was never just a book about politics. It was a manual for psychological sovereignty. It was Machiavelli looking at human nature with cold, clear eyes and saying, "The world is exactly as brutal as it is, so stop being surprised by it and start mastering it instead." That is the Machiavellian core. It is the decision to see reality without the filter of wishful thinking. It is the commitment to never again outsource your stability to another person, another outcome, or another external circumstance. Most men build their identity like a house of cards, stacked on top of what others think of them, on top of a relationship, on top of a job title, on top of a version of success that someone else defined for them. And the moment any one of those cards is pulled, everything collapses. The man with a Machiavellian core builds differently. He builds from the inside out. His identity is not attached to what he has. It is forged in who he is when he has nothing. That is the version of you that becomes truly untouchable. Not the man with the most possessions or the loudest reputation, but the man who remains completely himself when everything around him turns to ash. Go to the comments and type, "My core is unbreakable." Say it like you mean it because you're going to need to. Number 4, the silence strategy. Here is something the broken version of you did that you may not have even noticed. You talked too much. When life hit you, you explained yourself. You defended yourself. You overshared your pain with people who were quietly filing it away as weakness. You went looking for understanding in rooms full of people who were only pretending to care, and every time you opened your mouth to justify your collapse, you handed them ammunition they would eventually use against you. This is one of the most dangerous mistakes a man can make in his most vulnerable moments, and almost every man makes it, because pain wants an audience. Humiliation wants to be heard. The wounded ego craves validation the way a drowning man grabs for anything floating. But here is the cold truth that Machiavelli understood and that most modern men have completely forgotten. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a weapon. And it is one of the most powerful weapons available to a man in the process of rebuilding himself. Think about every great predator in nature. The lion does not announce the hunt. The wolf does not explain his strategy to the sheep. Power, real power, moves in quiet. It observes without revealing. It calculates without broadcasting. It rebuilds without performing the rebuild for an audience that never deserved a front-row seat to your transformation in the first place. When you go silent after a breaking, something profound happens. People who counted you out begin to get nervous. People who celebrated your collapse begin to look over their shoulder, because silence from a man who was once loud signals one thing and one thing only. He is no longer reacting. He is preparing. And a man who is preparing in silence is infinitely more dangerous than a man who is loudly announcing his intentions. This is where you begin to reclaim your psychological power. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds about you. You stop seeking closure from people who were never going to give it honestly. You stop performing your pain for a world that will consume it as entertainment and offer nothing of value in return. Instead, you go inward, you get disciplined, you get ruthlessly focused on the construction happening inside you while the world outside wonders what happened to the man they thought they had figured out. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Let them fill the silence with their own assumptions, because while they are busy talking about you, you are busy becoming someone they are not prepared for. That gap between who they think you are and who you are actually becoming, that gap is your greatest strategic advantage. Protect it with everything you have. Never perform your growth for an audience. Never let them see the blueprint. Show them only the finished building. Go to the comments right now and type, "I move in silence, I strike in strength," because that is no longer just a phrase. That is your operating system. Number 5, the reconstruction of self. Now we get to the part that separates the men who survive a breaking from the men who are genuinely transformed by it. Because surviving is not enough. Every man who has ever been shattered has two choices standing in front of him like two doors in a dark hallway. Behind the first door is the man who pieces himself back together exactly as he was before. Same beliefs, same patterns, same blind spots, same emotional vulnerabilities, just slightly more cautious, slightly more guarded, walking through life with the permanent flinch of someone waiting to be hit again. That man survives. But he never truly lives. He carries his past like a weight chained to his ankle, and no matter how far he walks, he never actually moves forward. Behind the second door is something entirely different. Behind the second door is the man who looks at the breaking as the most brutal and honest teacher he has ever had, who extracts every lesson from the wreckage with surgical precision, who uses the pain not as a wound to nurse, but as a forge, and steps out of it as something fundamentally, irreversibly different from what he was before. That is the door Machiavelli would choose. That is the door this channel exists to push you through. So let's talk about what reconstruction actually looks like, because it is nothing like what the self-help world sells you. It is not journaling your feelings into a leather notebook. It is not repeating affirmations in the mirror until you half believe them. It is not a weekend retreat or a motivational playlist or waiting for inspiration to arrive like a gift. Real reconstruction is cold. It is disciplined. It is architectural. You are not healing. You are engineering. You begin by deciding with absolute clarity and zero negotiation what this new identity stands for. Not what it looks like to others, not what makes you palatable or likable or easy to be around, what it stands for. What are the non-negotiable principles that will govern every decision you make from this moment forward? What are the standards below which you will never again allow yourself to fall, regardless of circumstance, regardless of temptation, regardless of how loud the world gets around you? These principles become your internal constitution. And unlike the fragile identity you had before, the one built on approval and circumstance, this constitution cannot be voted out. It cannot be overturned by someone's opinion of you. It cannot be shaken by a setback or dismantled by a betrayal, because it lives inside you, forged in the hottest fire you have ever walked through. Then you begin to build your habits around that constitution like walls around a fortress. Every morning discipline, every hour of focused work, every boundary you enforce, every time you choose long-term power over short-term comfort. These are not just good habits. They are acts of identity reinforcement. They are you telling yourself every single day, through action rather than words, exactly who you are and exactly who you are refusing to go back to being. Because here is what most men do not understand about identity. It is not something you discover. It is something you decide and then defend through relentless daily action. The man who waits to feel like his new self before acting like his new self will wait forever. You act first. You build first. The feeling follows the action, not the other way around. And slowly, brick by brick, discipline by discipline, boundary by boundary, the new architecture takes shape. Not the fragile, approval-seeking, circumstance-dependent version of you that the world managed to break. Something older. Something colder. Something that has looked at its own destruction and chosen, with full awareness, to become exactly what destruction could not finish. Go to the comments right now and type, "I am being forged, not fixed." Because that distinction is everything. You are not patching the old version. You are casting an entirely new one in iron. Number 6, the enemy within. You have been paying attention to the wrong enemy. You have been so focused on the people who betrayed you, the circumstances that blindsided you, the world that seemed to conspire against everything you were trying to build, that you missed the most dangerous adversary you will ever face. The one that lives inside your own skull. The one that speaks in your own voice. The one that knows every fear, every insecurity, every wound you have ever tried to hide, and uses that knowledge against you with a precision that no external enemy could ever match. This is the enemy within, and until you confront it with the same cold, strategic intelligence that Machiavelli applied to the courts of power, everything you build will remain vulnerable. Because here is the devastating reality that most men spend their entire lives running from. Your greatest limitation is never the obstacle in front of you. It is the narrative inside you. It is the story you have been telling yourself, quietly, consistently, with absolute conviction about who you are and what you deserve and what is possible for a man like you. That story was written a long time ago. Written by pain you didn't choose, by environments you didn't select, by people whose own brokenness shaped your earliest understanding of yourself and the world. And for years, maybe decades, you have been living inside that story as though it were fact, as though it were fixed, as though the narrative authored by your worst moments was somehow the definitive truth about your potential. It is not. It was never fact. It was always just a story. And the Machiavellian understands something about stories that most men never grasp. Whoever controls the narrative controls the outcome. In politics, in war, in the courts of the Renaissance, Machiavelli watched rulers rise and fall not simply on the basis of their actions, but on the basis of the story that surrounded those actions. The prince who controlled perception controlled power, and the same principle operates inside your own mind with terrifying accuracy. The story you tell yourself about yourself is the single most powerful political document in your life. It determines which opportunities you reach for and which ones you talk yourself out of before they even fully form. It determines how you respond to setbacks, whether you read them as confirmation of your limitations or as data points in a longer strategic campaign. It determines the quality of your decisions, the strength of your boundaries, the people you allow into your inner circle, and the standards you hold yourself to when nobody is watching. So the reconstruction of identity that we spoke about in the last section must begin here, with a ruthless, unsentimental audit of the internal narrative. You find the lies masquerading as self-knowledge. You find the fears that have been dressed up as realism. You find the places where someone else's voice took up residence in your mind and started speaking as though it were your own, and you evict them, not with affirmations, not with toxic positivity, but with evidence, with action, with the slow, powerful accumulation of proof that the story was wrong. Every time you do the hard thing, you rewrite a sentence. Every time you hold a boundary, you rewrite a paragraph. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, integrity over convenience, long-term vision over short-term relief, you are authoring a new document, one that reflects not the broken man shaped by his past, but the sovereign man defined by his choices. And eventually, the new story becomes so heavily reinforced by lived experience that the old one loses its power entirely. It doesn't disappear overnight. The enemy within is patient, and it knows your weak points intimately. There will be nights when the old narrative rushes back in like floodwater the moment your defenses drop. There will be moments of failure where that voice gets louder, more convincing, more familiar than the new identity you are constructing. In those moments, you do not argue with it. You do not negotiate with it. You do not try to reason your way out of it in real time. You simply act. You get up. You execute the next discipline. You make the next right decision. Because action is the only language the enemy within cannot argue with. It can twist your thoughts, it can flood you with doubt, but it cannot follow you into the arena when you actually move. Go to the comments right now and type, "I control the narrative." Because the moment you claim that, the enemy within loses its most powerful weapon against you. Number 7. The power of selective trust. Now that you have begun to dismantle the enemy within, now that you are rewriting the internal narrative and building an identity forged in discipline rather than shaped by damage, you must turn your attention to something equally critical, something that broken men almost always get catastrophically wrong in the aftermath of their collapse. The question of who gets access to you. Because here is a truth that Machiavelli understood with surgical clarity, a truth that the courts of Renaissance Italy demonstrated in blood and betrayal across centuries of political warfare. Your circle is not just a social preference. Your circle is a strategic decision. And most men, especially men who have been recently broken, make this decision with their wounds rather than their wisdom. They let people in because they are lonely. They keep people around because the history is long, even when the loyalty is thin. They confuse familiarity with trustworthiness, comfort with alignment, and the absence of obvious betrayal with the presence of genuine allegiance. And in doing so, they hand the keys of their reconstruction to people who were never qualified to hold them. Understand this with absolute clarity. Not everyone who smiles at your comeback was suffering during your collapse. Not everyone who shows up when you are rising again was present when you were drowning. And not everyone who calls themselves your supporter is actually invested in the full, powerful, uncompromising version of you that you are in the process of becoming. Some people loved the version of you that was broken because broken men are easier to manage. Broken men are less threatening. Broken men don't enforce boundaries, don't demand standards, don't outgrow the roles that others have assigned to them. The moment you begin to rebuild with real power, with real self-respect, with real clarity about your worth and your direction, some people in your life will become deeply uncomfortable. And that discomfort will not always look like open hostility. It will look like subtle discouragement dressed as concern. It will look like jokes that carry just enough edge to chip at your confidence. It will look like people who constantly redirect your ambition towards something smaller, safer, more convenient for their own sense of where you belong. The Machiavellian sees through all of it. He does not become paranoid. Paranoia is just fear wearing an intelligent mask. But he becomes discerning. He watches behavior over time rather than accepting declarations of loyalty at face value. He pays attention to who celebrates his wins without reservation and who celebrates them with a quiet asterisk. He notices who pushes him toward his highest standards and who subtly pulls him back toward his lowest habits. He understands that trust, real trust, is not given. It is earned through consistent evidence gathered over significant time and tested under genuine pressure. And he structures his inner circle accordingly. The outermost ring is for acquaintances, people he is cordial with, professional with, but reveals nothing of true strategic importance to. The middle ring is for allies, people who have demonstrated alignment of values and consistency of character, but who have not yet passed the deepest tests. And the innermost circle, the sacred, protected, almost ruthlessly curated inner circle that is reserved for the rare few who have proven, through action rather than words, through sacrifice rather than sentiment, that they are genuinely invested in his elevation rather than his limitation. Guard that inner circle like a fortress. Because every great man who has ever fallen, in history, in politics, in business, in life, fell not because the world outside was too strong, but because the circle inside was compromised. Your reconstruction depends not just on what you build within yourself, but on who you allow to stand near the construction. Choose with your wisdom. Choose with your eyes open. Choose with the cold, clear, unsentimental intelligence of a man who has already paid the devastating price of choosing wrong. Go to the comments right now and type, "My circle is my strategy," because from this moment forward, access to you is a privilege that must be earned, never assumed. Number 8, the art of becoming dangerous. There is a version of you that the world has not yet seen, a version that has not yet fully surfaced because until now, the conditions were never right for it to emerge. But understand this, that version was always there, waiting, compressed beneath the weight of misplaced loyalty, beneath years of shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for your full dimension, beneath the slow accumulation of compromises that felt small individually but collectively reduced you to something far beneath what you were always capable of becoming. That version of you is not gentle. It is not eager to please. It does not negotiate its worth or apologize for its presence or make itself smaller so that insecure people can feel comfortable in its vicinity. It is disciplined in a way that makes ordinary men uncomfortable. It is focused in a way that cuts through noise like a blade through silk. It is the version of you that has been refined by fire, sharpened by betrayal, clarified by loss, and is now operating not from emotion, but from pure, cold, sovereign intention. That version of you is dangerous. And dangerous, in the Machiavellian sense, does not mean destructive. It does not mean cruel or reckless or consumed by revenge. Dangerous means you are no longer manageable by manipulation. Dangerous means your sense of self is no longer dependent on external validation, which makes flattery useless against you. Dangerous means you have developed such an intimate understanding of human nature, its vanities, its fears, its predictable patterns of behavior, that you can see agendas before they are announced and recognize betrayal before it fully forms. Dangerous means that the psychological levers that once moved you, the fear of rejection, The hunger for approval, the dread of being alone, the desperate need to be understood, have been located, examined, and systematically dismantled so that no person can reach in and pull them anymore. This is what Machiavelli was pointing toward when he wrote about the prince who is both lion and fox. The lion who has the strength to confront what threatens him directly. The fox who has the intelligence to recognize and navigate the traps that brute strength alone cannot defeat. You are becoming both. The lion who no longer flinches when the world roars at him. The fox who sees the trap 20 moves before it is sprung. And here is what happens when you reach this level. The dynamic of every relationship in your life begins to shift. People who once took your kindness for weakness begin to recalibrate. People who once pushed your boundaries begin to encounter a resistance they did not expect and cannot easily explain. People who once dismissed you begin to pay a different quality of attention. Not because you have become loud or aggressive or performatively dominant, but because there is something in the way a truly rebuilt man carries himself that the human animal recognizes instinctively. A stillness that is not passivity, a quietness that is not weakness, a patience that is not hesitation but precision, the patience of a man who knows exactly what he is capable of and has absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone who doubted him. You are not becoming dangerous to destroy others. You are becoming dangerous so that you can never again be destroyed yourself. You are building the kind of psychological and strategic fortitude that makes you genuinely, permanently difficult to manipulate, difficult to destabilize, difficult to diminish, and impossible to break in the ways that you were broken before. That is the art. That is the transformation. That is what this entire rebuild has been pointing toward from the very first moment you decided to stop surviving and start becoming. Go to the comments right now and type, "I am the lion and the fox," because you are no longer one-dimensional, and neither is your power. Number 9, the long game. Every man who has ever been broken wants the same thing in the immediate aftermath of his collapse. He wants the recovery to be fast. He wants the transformation to be visible quickly. He wants to feel powerful again before the wound has even fully closed, because sitting in the in-between, that uncomfortable, ambiguous space between who he was and who he is becoming, is one of the most psychologically demanding places a human being can inhabit. And so he rushes. He forces, he tries to compress months of genuine internal reconstruction into weeks of frantic external activity. He makes loud declarations before he has built the quiet foundation to support them. He chases visible results before he has done the invisible work that makes those results sustainable. And then when the rushed version collapses, as it always does, because anything built in desperation carries the structural weakness of desperation within it, he concludes that the transformation was impossible rather than simply premature. This is the trap. And Machiavelli, with his unflinching understanding of power and human nature, identified it with devastating clarity across every domain of political and personal life. The man who cannot master time will always be mastered by it. The prince who moves before the conditions are right does not demonstrate boldness. He demonstrates impatience. And impatience is nothing more than fear wearing the costume of urgency. The truly powerful man understands something that the broken, desperate, result-hungry version of himself could never grasp. That the long game is not a consolation prize for men who cannot win quickly. The long game is the only game that produces unshakable results. It is the game played by every man in history who built something that actually lasted. Every empire, every dynasty, every legacy of genuine power was constructed not in explosive bursts of frantic energy, but in the slow, patient, relentless accumulation of disciplined action compounded over time. This is what you must internalize now at this stage of your rebuild, when the temptation to rush is at its most seductive. The work you are doing right now, the silent reconstruction, the internal rewiring, the daily disciplines that nobody is applauding yet, the boundaries you are enforcing without an audience, the standards you are holding in the dark when no external reward is forthcoming. This work is not preparation for your power. This work is your power. The results will surface. They always do. A man who is genuinely changing at the root level cannot hide that change forever. It begins to leak out through the quality of his decisions. It begins to show in the way he responds to pressure, in the stillness he maintains under provocation, in the caliber of opportunities that begin to find him because he has quietly become the kind of man that serious things are drawn toward. But none of that can be forced. None of it can be performed into existence. It must be grown the way anything of genuine substance is grown. In the dark, in the quiet, through consistent nourishment and patient, unwavering commitment to the process, even when the process offers no immediate applause. So you play the long game. You resist the seduction of shortcuts. You resist the temptation to show your hand before the moment is right. You resist the urge to announce a transformation that is still being built in the silent architecture of your daily choices. You let the work speak when it is ready to speak. And when it does, and it will speak in a language so undeniable, so rooted in genuine substance rather than performed confidence, that no one who encounters it will be able to dismiss it, diminish it, or take it from you. Because what is built slowly, built in silence, built through real discipline over real time, that is the only thing in this world that is truly, permanently unshakable. Go to the comments right now and type, "I play the long game, I build in silence." Because patience is not weakness. In the hands of a rebuilding man, patience is the most lethal weapon on earth. Number 10, the untouchable. You made it to the end. And that alone tells me something about you. Because most people click away. Most people consume the first few minutes of something like this, feel a brief rush of inspiration, and then return to the same patterns, the same excuses, the same comfortable misery they have been living in for years. But you stayed. And staying, real staying, attentive and hungry and honest with yourself all the way through, is the first act of the man you are becoming. So let me leave you with this. Everything we have covered in this monologue, the wreckage, the autopsy, the Machiavellian core, the silent strategy, the reconstruction, the enemy within, the selective trust, the art of becoming dangerous, the long game, none of it is theory. None of it is philosophy designed to be admired from a distance and never applied. It is a blueprint, a cold, precise, battle-tested blueprint for the man who has been broken and has made the non-negotiable decision that he will not stay broken, and the man who follows that blueprint, who does the work in silence, who masters the enemy within, who guards his circle with intelligence, who plays the long game with unwavering patience. That man becomes something this world has very few words for. He becomes untouchable, not untouchable because nothing ever hits him again. Life will hit you again. That is not pessimism. That is the honest nature of existence. But untouchable because when it hits, he does not shatter. He does not collapse into the old patterns, the old narratives, the old desperate search for external validation to tell him who he is. He absorbs. He recalibrates. He responds from a place of such deep internal sovereignty that the hit, regardless of how hard it lands, never reaches the core. Because the core is now made of something different, something that was not there before the breaking, something that could only have been forged in exactly the kind of fire that you have already walked through. That is the gift hidden inside your destruction. That is the secret that Machiavelli understood, and that the world's most powerful men have always known. You do not find your greatest self in comfort. You find it in the wreckage. You build it in the silence. You forge it in the fire. And when it is complete, it is yours forever. Untouchable, unmovable, unconquerable. Drop a comment right now and type, "I am untouchable." Say it, claim it, own it completely. If this monologue reached something real inside you, hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian Mind, and turn on notifications. Because what we are building on this channel is not content. It is a movement, and you are now part of it.